So on my last day of medical school, I saw my first ever acute death of a patient. I'd seen dying patients before then, even wrote a couple death summaries, but it was always the old, frail, declining patient where you saw it coming. They were surrounded by their family, the type of death you would see in a movie. This time around though, I was on an emergency medicine shift from 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. It was my last day as a medical student and it was bittersweet. I was about to graduate and get that MD after my name, but it also meant more responsibility and feeling like, damn, I better know my shit. Now in the emergency department, when there's an acute case about to come in, EMS will give everyone a heads up and the charge nurse will do the same thing, letting the attending doctor know that something is coming. This can be a stroke, a heart attack, a suicide attempt, a car accident, you name it, anything where we'd have to act fast. This particular night, it was the latter, it was a car accident. The nurse ran over and told the attending doctor I was working with, 2-vehicle collision, airbags deployed, windshield broken, driver VSA on scene, ETA 30 minutes. And I thought to myself, VSA on scene, what the hell is that? I don't remember reading that in any med school lecture. So the doctor I was working with, he looked over at me and he asked me, do you know what the chances of survival are after being VSA on scene? He saw my puzzled face and realized I didn't know what that meant. He made a gesture with his hand signaling 0. Then he proceeded to tell me that VSA meant vital signs absent, which means the driver was pretty much dead on scene and he was being brought to the hospital as more or less a formality so the doctor could announce the death, write the death certificate, and the logistics could be taken care of. Now this shook me up a bit, but the shift went on and I got back to work as we waited for EMS to bring him in. A few minutes later, the trauma code team assembled outside the resuscitation room and the patient was brought in. He was hooked up to Lucas, an automatic CPR machine that EMS uses. You should probably Google it, it's pretty cool to look at. And it aggressively pressed on this guy's chest over and over again in keeping with how a code is normally run. They hooked him up to all the wires and manually breathed for him through a bag. The trauma team lead doctor did an ultrasound of the chest and he couldn't even see the heart on the screen. There was too much subcutaneous air and internal organ shifting, as my staff doctor explained it. They ran through the protocol as pretty much a formality and then announced his death. Everyone went back to their part of the department and got back to work. I stood at the end of the room trying to stay out of the way but also curious. His ankle was dislocated, as was his shoulder. He had a huge laceration on his forehead, probably from the windshield. His eyes were still somewhat open but no signs of life. Then I found out the part that really shook me awake. He was a 22-year-old kid. Zoomed through a stop sign, and that was it. Gone. I remember his name and his face to this day. A few minutes later, the nurse came to the trauma team leader and said, "The family is on the way." He asked calmly, like it was nothing, like he'd done it 1,000 times before. "Do they know he's dead?" She answered yes and went back to her chair. He got back to work, and as did the rest of the department. On to the next patient, on to the next task. I don't blame them. You have to move on to helping the patients that can still use your help. You would lose your mind if you got caught up in every patient that died in this field. But at the time, I was just a medical student, not a seasoned vet. I couldn't move along so quick. I went to the bathroom to collect my thoughts. This 22-year-old kid just died. His body is laying there 20 feet from me, lifeless. His shocked family is on the way to see it. His mother that birthed him, his father that hoped to see his young boy do things in this world, all gone. Any dreams he had, vision he wanted to pursue, ceased to exist that night. All with the "do they know he's dead" to cap it off. And on the world went without him. It hit me so hard because I was 26 years old at this time with soulless eyes myself. I was still alive in the sense that I had a pulse, but beyond that, I'd been existing more than living. I wasn't all too happy with where my life was, even though it looked like success from the outside looking in. I got into med school my first try, I built up a nice little physique for myself, I was making my parents proud, all that was fine, but I felt completely dead inside. I felt like I was living a life that someone else had decided for me. My life's work, genuine curiosities, and true desires were locked away a long time ago. I looked to my future, which I was just reminded was not guaranteed, and I didn't like what I saw. I didn't want to just keep on this conveyor belt and do what everyone else was doing. It might make them happy, but it's not for me. I wanted to create, to build, to use the opportunities, blessings, and abilities that my Creator gave me to do what truly lights me up. As a kid, I was always a storyteller, a comedian, a builder, and entrepreneur. All that got pushed to the side in favor of the safe path of becoming a physician. You know how it is in immigrant families. Doctor, lawyer, engineer, or failure. I didn't hate being a physician, but I always saw it as the thing that I was made to do rather than what I chose to do. It didn't help that the whole process of medical training is standardized into jumping through hoops, regardless of your unique traits and interests. I saw it as in the way of my life's work rather than part of it. I saw the other physicians I work with operating the conveyor belt of patients that came through with the same conditions, the same medications, the same broken promises they made to themselves. These doctors made good money, they were well respected, they had safe jobs, and all the things any parents would want for their kids. Many of them were happy, or at least they put on a good show. Many of them were visibly stressed with little control over their lives, but in too deep to do anything about it. That fateful night in the emergency department, I was on the path to becoming a surgeon. Another 5 years of residency training, probably a year or two of fellowship, then fighting and clawing for a job afterwards. And then living within the new confines of whatever group I would join at the time, because I would be the most junior surgeon. And as the saying goes in medicine, shit rolls downhill. I loved the surgeons I worked with as a student. It never felt like work. We joked around, we had fun, and they were damn good at their jobs. Did I want to be a surgeon? No. I wanted the title, the status, and the money they made. I had no interest in the process. I didn't appreciate it at the time, that the process is all there is. When I studied the topics, it was forced and just enough to impress whoever I was working with. After that mini existential crisis on the last day of medical school, I did a complete 180 and switched the specialty I was pursuing to primary care. I didn't want to operate the conveyor belt of signing prescriptions or replacing joints. I wanted to practice medicine my way, focused on prevention and digging deeper into the root cause of patients' problems, instead of doing patchwork on the symptoms. In many cases, these root causes are hidden in their own decisions. I wanted to make medicine part of my life and do it in a way that allowed for my inherent interests and curiosities to be brought to life. Doing primary care opened up a world of freedom and flexibility to me, to allow me to build and explore my creative endeavors away from work. The process never ends, but I'm much happier now. I'm building my life's work, of which this platform is a part, while approaching my job in a whole new light. I actually enjoy being a physician more than I ever have because I get to practice it on my terms and help people with those root causes. I get to involve my inherent interests of psychology, purpose, existence, and try to understand why people make the decisions they do while educating my patients in these realms. I've revived my childhood love for writing and creation and building around my genuine curiosities and passions. I hope this work serves others, but at the very least, it allows the thoughts in my head to be expressed in the world as I make sense of them. Think of these as my public journal entries. I made a promise to myself that day to live intentionally and question every decision I was making and who I was making it for. I encourage you to do the same. Don't follow the path laid out by someone else. Learn from everyone and taste what's out there to design your own path. This is not a dress rehearsal, folks. It's your one and only existence that is fragile, and it must be lived with conviction and purpose. One day the curtains will close, and the stage of life will no longer be yours. The rest of the world will move on, and as will you, to a realm that we're unsure of. All that will remain is the work you expressed from your soul and how it touched the rest of us. Wake up, you are dying. Live with intention and allow that faint voice in your heart to be heard by the masses. Go on your second pursuit. Till next time.